The telling image is actually borrowed from Lois Farfel Stark, who is a documentarian and she's a photographer that's known worldwide, long career. She did a TEDx. There was an article that I ran across when I was exploring the torus, and she wrote a book called The Telling Image. And in the book, of course, what she's saying is there's this evolution kind of like a basic organizing principle in societies that like kind of like societies they take a certain shape. And so she goes through that, and obviously the what we're emerging into, like she recognizes the network shape, like we think of everything now as networks, the internet, and our brains are networks, and our highways are networks, and our social systems are networks. It's like the network pattern has like absorbed our imagination. And so what she's saying is the new pattern that's coming is the torus. So I bring her up because that's what I'm feeling, is I'm seeing this torus emerging. So that's what
Mm-hmm.
this slide deck is about, is kind of to share some of like how this orients in time and place with other stuff that's going on. And one of the things is donut economics, which a lot of folks in the regenerative movement are familiar with. And what's interesting about donut economics is this is the range of tolerance. This is like the consent, really. This is another way to visualize consent, because it's saying we can't go too far into the center, can't have too much of a shortfall, but we also can't go too far out to the edge. We can't have too much of an overshoot. We're like our safe place for humanity's economy is like in this donut, in this and that's what the torus does, is it's that's the regulating function that it offers. So that's one
Mm-hmm.
of the places that we're seeing the torus showing up. And then there's this image of network effects, and people talk about network effects, and that's what is kind of the goal of these networks and network governance, is that each new node creates more value for every other node in a network. And so it's not growing virally, but it is growing like in this way of this network effect, which becomes very resilient.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the torus again. There isn't anybody at the center here. The nodes aren't at the center, right? And there's that potential for like the purpose at the center, right? Like what's holding these nodes together is the center. And this matches, going back to that Visible Network Labs and their infographic, it matches the self-governing network pattern, which, if we're going to talk about strategy, Kara, we need to be doing some self-organizing, right? And not waiting for our governments to just completely collapse. And so you see mutual aid networks, you know, we can have a lot of social impact networks like doing this self-governance model. And here you see the dotted line, right? It's like we're all part of it. We're all have a role to play in it. And that's, Kara, that's the torus. That's like we have the individual, the nested systems. Um, and the nested seeds of life, we all have a part to play. And so and this is a nested seed of life, again, like this image. And so it correlates really well. It's like, yes, this is, and it's consent-based decision making in general. So they're just observing patterns, and we're like saying this is what we're supporting with all of our materials and work is like this
Mm-hmm.
particular mode of governance, right now, which we think is the way to go. You also see it in some of our colleagues are coming up with ways of understanding like how, like what's, how do we create this with each other, what we're all longing for. And so this pattern repeats itself, right? The circle's going around the purpose, reflect
Mm-hmm.
roles that we might take in service to the purpose. The spiral is how we're doing this together. We're spiraling. The journey is spiral, not linear. And then I love this. The National Academy of Medicine recognizes community engagement and these values at the center, and community engagement being, right, core principles at the center.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest of what we are doing coming, kind of, right, spiraling out of that principled center.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these, again, the telling image, like this is somehow helping us to see a more whole picture, which is what the torus is. It's a whole systems. It's an energetically, it's a pattern for whole systems. And even just recently in the last few years, we've only gotten these pictures of the black hole at the center of the Milky Way galaxy and the energy that's spiraling around that black hole, and the particles form a torus. And so this image has only been available to us for a few years. So it kind of aligns with this photographer's book that like somehow it's like our brains, even, we're reorganizing, and the quantum understanding is reorganizing us, and our paradigm shift is happening that's reorganizing us, and nature and ecology and all of it. I'm saying is like, this is not the only shape. There's lots of other shapes. People like icebergs, right? They like to use iceberg. It's like there's lots of shapes in nature. We're just bringing attention to this one as a way to say, how can we organize at a kind of scale, right? So seeds of life going fractal mean that we can each have our individual, our own seed of life, our own center, our own Venn diagram that we set at the center of, our own intersection that says like our own intersection of cultures that's as individual as our own thumbprint, right? We're a unique snowflake in that regard, like in terms of our own node in this. And so we are a seed of life. And we also participate, right, with others in seeds of life. And then like what may be important is if we can shift this structure that we were just showing, that network structure, we can get to the flower of life level. And that's coming. That's coming, Kara. Kind of jumped ahead. But that's basically, that is the seed of life is a fractal component of the flower of life. So we're going to get to that soon. But let's just say this torus, and the sense of motion and spin and spiral and all of those things that are so important, and regeneration, right? And cycles. That's what we want to really hold on to, not as the thing, but hold on to as something really that could be a guide. And because, you know, cycles are what sustain life. So as we connect again with more ecology, the regenerative cycle is actually a slice of the torus. And people will be familiar with this regenerative cycle.
Nice.
So that one is about, that was about the telling image. That was about where else we're seeing these torus-like patterns.